This is not a policy dispute. This is not a disagreement over economics, interest rates, or fiscal strategy. What we are witnessing is a political attack, pure and simple, and it fits squarely into a pattern that has defined Donald Trump's presidency from the beginning. Whether Trump personally ordered these actions or whether loyalists around him have taken it upon themselves to act in his interest is almost beside the point. The result is the same, a deliberate campaign of retribution against anyone who refuses to bend to his will. This time, that target is Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, and the implications extend far beyond one man or one institution. This attack strikes at the core of economic stability in the United States, where confidence, credibility, and independence are not abstract ideals, but the foundation on which the global financial system rests. The Federal Reserve's independence is not ceremonial, it is not optional, it is essential. The stability of the dollar, the trust of international markets, and the predictability that allows businesses and households to plan for the future all depend on the Fed being insulated from political pressure. Even the perception that this independence is being compromised can cause real, measurable damage. Markets react not just to policy changes, but to uncertainty. When investors believe interest rates may be set according to political loyalty rather than economic data, capital retreats, volatility rises, borrowing costs increase, and growth slows. The damage does not require an actual firing or a successful lawsuit. The mere suggestion that the president is willing to weaponize the Justice Department against the central bank is enough to shake confidence. Donald Trump is not acting from a position of strength. In fact, he is rapidly losing the institutional power that once shielded him. He has lost the Senate. He is on the verge of losing his presidency. The midterms are shaping up to be a devastating blow for Republicans, and Trump knows it. His majority in the House is shrinking by the day, weakened further by resignations, internal fractures, and open rebellion within his own party. In the Senate, his authority is collapsing entirely as Republicans who once enabled him are now publicly distancing themselves. Trump is entering lame, duck status faster than even his critics anticipated, and rather than moderating his behavior, he has chosen to accelerate the chaos. This is the context in which his attacks on Jerome Powell must be understood. They are not about construction costs, competence, or oversight. They are about control. They are about punishing resistance. Trump has spent years telegraphing his hostility toward the Federal Reserve whenever it failed to deliver him political advantages. He demanded rate cuts before elections, attacked Powell when markets wobbled, and praised the Fed only when it appeared to serve his immediate interests. Now, facing declining power and growing accountability, Trump is escalating from rhetoric to retaliation. Before examining the broader Republican backlash, it is important to understand the gravity of what happened when Jerome Powell felt compelled to address the American people directly. This was not a routine statement. Powell is known for restraint, caution, and understatement. For him to speak so plainly, so publicly, and with such urgency was extraordinary. It signaled that the threat was no longer theoretical. When the chair of the Federal Reserve believes that political interference has reached a level requiring direct public reassurance, something has gone deeply wrong. The stakes were clearly articulated by Senator Mark Warner, who framed the issue not as a partisan dispute but as a national crisis. The strength of the U.S. economy, the stability of the dollar, and America's reputation as a reliable global partner are all tied to institutional integrity. When the Fed sets interest rates based on evidence rather than political demands, it anchors global confidence. When that process is attacked, everything else is put at risk. Warner emphasized that this chaos is not isolated to monetary policy. It exists alongside reckless foreign policy decisions, strained alliances, military overextension, and strategic incoherence. From Venezuela to the Middle East, from NATO relations to energy security, the administration has substituted impulse for strategy. None of this chaos is reducing costs for American families. None of it addresses health care, housing, or wages. Instead, it compounds uncertainty. Republicans themselves have begun to recognize this. Breaks within the party are no longer rare or symbolic. Multiple Republicans have already defected on major foreign policy votes, including Venezuela. Others have broken ranks on health care. These are not isolated acts of conscience. They are signals that Trump's grip on his party is slipping, and that institutional loyalty is beginning to outweigh personal fear. The response from Trump's defenders only underscores the danger. The rhetoric has shifted from denial to intimidation. The language of governance has been replaced by the language of a gangster state, where power is enforced through threats rather than legitimacy. The suggestion that Democrats should respond in kind, by openly warning of future accountability, reflects a grim reality. The normal guardrails have failed. When the rule of law is selectively enforced, and when institutions are treated as tools of personal vengeance, democratic norms erode rapidly. This would be dangerous even if the economy were strong. But it is not. The economy is fragile, strained by tariffs, market manipulation, and policy unpredictability. Trump's use of tariffs as a political weapon has distorted markets and enriched insiders while raising costs for consumers. His repeated attacks on Powell have backfired, creating precisely the instability he claims to oppose. These attacks are blowing up in his face because he telegraphed them for so long that markets were already braced for damage. Investors understand the pattern. They know what comes next. Trump himself has all but admitted that his grievances are political. He has accused Powell of acting too late, except when it suited Trump's electoral interests, at which point he accused him of acting too early. The contradictions are revealing. They demonstrate that Trump's metric for competence is not economic performance, but personal benefit. His talk of suing Powell for gross incompetence over building renovations is transparently absurd. Construction overruns are common, particularly for secure federal facilities. The idea that this constitutes criminal negligence is laughable on its face, especially coming from a man whose business record is defined by bankruptcies. Trump's history is relevant here. He bankrupted casinos, hotels, and even the Plaza Hotel, an achievement so rare it borders on the surreal. He has presided over projects that collapsed entirely, not merely ran over budget. For him to posture as a steward of fiscal responsibility would be comical if the consequences were not so severe. This is not oversight. This is projection. Even critics of Powell have recognized the pattern. This moment mirrors the firing of James Comey. One does not need to admire Comey's career to acknowledge that he stood up to Trump and survived. The same is likely true of Powell. The difference is that Powell is backed not by public opinion alone, but by capital markets, institutional investors, and global financial systems that Trump cannot intimidate. Money is not loyal. It responds to incentives and risk. And when faced with a president willing to undermine central bank independence, money moves elsewhere. This reality explains why Trump has not fired Powell outright. He understands, at least dimly, that doing so would trigger market panic. His advisors understand it even better. The consequences would be catastrophic, not just politically but economically. This is why Senate Republicans are now stepping in, not out of moral awakening, but out of self-preservation. Senator Tom Tilley's response marked a turning point. His statement that the independence and credibility of the Department of Justice are now in question was not hyperbole, it was an indictment. Tilley's recognized that launching a criminal probe into the Fed chair at the president's urging crosses a red line. It weaponizes law enforcement against monetary policy. It signals to markets that no institution is safe from political reprisal. Tilley's went further, pledging to block the confirmation of any Federal Reserve nominee until the matter is resolved. This is not symbolic resistance. It is procedural warfare. It demonstrates that Trump no longer controls the levers of power he once took for granted. When Senate Republicans begin openly obstructing a president of their own party, the balance has shifted. The irony is striking. After years of attacks on Adam Schiff, James Comey, Letitia James, and countless others, it is only now that Tilley's claims concern about DOJ independence. This belated awakening exposes the cynicism of his timing, yet even delayed resistance has consequences. Tilley's opposition on Venezuela, on the Fed, and on executive overreach reflects a broader erosion of Trump's authority. This pattern repeats across the Republican Party. Lawmakers who know their careers are ending suddenly discover their consciences. They go rogue only when the cost of compliance disappears. This does not inspire admiration, but it does alter outcomes. Power does not care about motives. It responds to actions. The broader economic context cannot be ignored. Republicans claim to be fighting fraud, yet the largest fraud in the system is staring everyone in the face. Donald Trump himself embodies systemic corruption. His enrichment did not occur in isolation. It came at the expense of taxpayers, consumers, and institutional integrity. Representative Jasmine Crockett articulated this reality with clarity. She exposed how accusations of fraud are selectively deployed against marginalized communities, particularly immigrants, while elite corruption is ignored. When one individual commits wrongdoing, entire communities are vilified. Meanwhile, documented cases of corruption within the administration are buried. The case she highlighted, involving $50,000 in taxpayer money allegedly exchanged for future contracts, is not a minor scandal. It is a textbook example of corruption. The fact that a DOJ investigation was abandoned as soon as Trump took office raises profound questions about selective enforcement. The money was accepted in cash from an undercover FBI agent. No charges, no accountability, no recovery of funds, no congressional investigation. This is fraud, not rhetorical fraud, real fraud, the kind that corrodes trust and hollow out governance, and it is dwarfed by the scale of Trump's own enrichment. From foreign gifts to crypto, schemes to private deals with billionaires, the pattern is unmistakable. Wealth does not appear out of thin air. When Trump and his family gain millions, someone else loses billions. The Qatari jet is not a symbol of diplomacy. It is a symbol of influence peddling. Crypto ventures tied to Trump are not innovation. They are extraction. When Jeff Bezos pays $30 million for a Melania Trump project that few people will watch, the transaction is not about art. It is about access. That $30 million must be weighed against the billions in tax revenue that should be collected from corporations like Amazon. When that revenue disappears, it is stolen from the public. This is the true fraud. It is structural, it is normalized, and it is defended by distraction. Trump's attacks on Jerome Powell are not just personal vendettas. They are smokescreens designed to divert attention from a collapsing coalition, a weakening economy, and a presidency that is rapidly losing legitimacy. What we are seeing now is not the rise of authoritarian control, but its unraveling. Trump is lashing out because the institutions he once bent are beginning to push back. The Federal Reserve is standing firm. Senate Republicans are breaking ranks. Markets are signaling resistance. Power is slipping, and Trump knows it. The danger lies in the damage inflicted along the way. Institutions can survive attacks, but only if they are defended consistently. The independence of the Fed is not a partisan issue. It is a prerequisite for economic stability. Undermining it for short-term political gain is reckless beyond measure. History will not be kind to this moment. It will record that a president facing accountability and decline chose to gamble with the global economy rather than accept limits on his power. It will also record who stood up, who stayed silent, and who waited until it was safe. The outcome remains uncertain, but one truth is clear: the money will not lie. Markets will not pretend, and no amount of intimidation can override economic reality forever.